Hello! Welcome to my series where we take old, treasured midwestern recipes and we revamp them. Today we're doing beer cheese spaghetti sauce. So as I was flipping through this recipe book, obviously a lot of things caught my eye, but beer cheese spaghetti sauce really stood out to me because I've had beer cheese before. It's really good. I've had it as a dip, but to use it as a spaghetti sauce is what threw me off, because for spaghetti sauce you think of a red sauce, right? So I was kind of wondering how that would all play out, especially after looking through the ingredients. And the ingredients in question being butter, chopped onions, chopped celery, flour, chicken broth, cheddar cheese, grated carrots, warm beer, parsley, and chives. So to kick it off, we're melting the butter, which is per the recipe. And then the recipe calls for the onion and celery. However, I picked up the flour thinking it was the onions because they're the same color. I wasn't paying attention and I just dumped the flour in there. So instead of recutting celery and starting over, even though it was pretty early on, I just said, screw it, we're gonna dump the flour in with the celery and the onions and we'll make a roux while sauteing the veggies. Because basically the flour was supposed to go in after the veggies were tender anyway, so it's not like it was so much farther down the recipe that it would have made a huge difference. And you really just stirred the flour until all of the lumps were out, so this kind of just added a little extra flavor. And then you add the chicken broth, parsley, and chives. I didn't have any chives. They didn't have them at the store, so it was just the chicken broth and the parsley. And then that all got stirred together with the veggies and the flour just to make sure it was all cohesive. And then once that's all mixed together, you put in half of your carrots, stirred it up, and then you're supposed to let it simmer for 20 to 30 minutes. But because I have this recipe, it really only took 15. It was perfect at 15 minutes. And I think it was just because there was less liquid and less veg to cook. Perfect. Once that's all reduced and everything's tender, add in your cheese and the rest of your carrots and just mix until cohesive, until everything's incorporated. So as I was mixing everything in, it just looked a little chunky and I was trying to figure out if it was the cheese not melting or it was just the fact that there's shredded carrots in it. And I think it was just the carrots. And then the last step is to add beer to taste. I added a little extra because I added a little less chicken broth. And I just whisked it all together to make sure, again, it was incorporating, the cheese was melting, nothing was too clumpy where it shouldn't be. So this recipe didn't call for salt, and I had the hardest time following that. It just hurt my bones to not salt this. So I did add salt, and I figured I had already gone off script by adding the flour with the veggies. So I was like, why not just add salt and make this a little bit better? Once the sauce was completed, I set it to the side to kind of stay warm, and then I just made the spaghetti per box instructions. I did want it to be a little bit more al dente because I was going to finish it in the spaghetti sauce with a little bit of pasta water. So before draining my pasta, I reserved probably about 1.5 cups of water. I didn't need all of it, but just in case. Set that aside, then drained my pasta, added it back to the pot I boiled it in because that was bigger, and then added the sauce into that pot just so there was enough room for everything. Added in some pasta water, I want to say 1/2 to a full cup, and then stirred everything together, brought it to a simmer, and finished cooking the pasta together with the sauce. Okay, so the overall verdict for beer cheese spaghetti sauce is it's super duper mild. Kraft mac and cheese has more flavor than this sauce. And I should have known that, looking at all the ingredients, it's really just a mirepoix. So a mirepoix is just onions, celery, and carrots. That's what a mirepoix is. And it's the base of a lot of stuff, but it's very mild and very sweet. And there's not a whole lot extra. Butter's your fat, which is yummy. Everyone, loves that fattiness. Flour is flour. It's basic. Chicken broth adds a little bit of flavor. The cheese kind of does, but it's not like a really intense cheese. Like shredded cheddar cheese isn't super intense. And then the beer, again, like that sweet, mild, kind of like yeasty flavor. Honestly, the thing that packs the biggest punch is parsley. And honestly, I took a bite of the spaghetti with some parsley on top, and all I could taste was parsley because I got like a little parsley leaf, and usually it like adds to it and it doesn't overwhelm. Like parsley isn't an overwhelming flavor necessarily, but it really overwhelmed the sauce. But just because it's mild doesn't mean it's bad. Like I kept going back for bites. Like I was curious. I didn't hate it by any means. Like it was decent. Like it was good. It was just really, really chill. And I was kind of looking for something a little cheesier, honestly, a little bit more complex. I'm sure if I used a different type of cheddar cheese or just a different type of cheese in general, it would have been different. But this was like really, really mild. I also realized while I was eating it that this was probably meant to be poured over noodles, not cooked with it. So that could give you a different experience. Who knows? I don't, because I didn't try it that way, but here we are. But other than that, I liked it. I did eat a decent amount of it. Definitely was wanting something with more of a punch, basically. Okay, now it's time for our revamp recipe. Things I'm keeping in this recipe are the butter, carrots, beer, and parsley. Things I'm substituting are vegetable stock in place of the chicken stock. And then I'm adding potatoes, cauliflower, roasted garlic, nutritional yeast, coconut cream, salt and pepper, and that's actually it. I'm trying to keep like the creamy cheesiness of the original by using nutritional yeast, potatoes, and the coconut cream. This is based off of something I've made in the past, but I've never used it necessarily in this application. So we're gonna see how it goes. Okay, so to start, I added the potatoes, cauliflower, and carrots to the pot. Added some salt because you have to. So I just added the whole can of beer. So it would create like a layer of liquid on the bottom that would then steam the veggies. You're not looking to boil them. You don't want to submerge the vegetables in liquid because you also don't want your sauce to be soup. Like this is a sauce. It should be thick. So just enough liquid to steam the veggies, covered it, and then honestly just like over medium heat, let it rock until the veggies were tender. So once the veggies were kind of getting to where I wanted them to be, I put on a pot of water for the spaghetti just to kind of, make the process go faster. Always want to salt your pasta water because then that salts your pasta and no one wants unsalted pasta. The next step for the sauce was to add the roasted garlic. So I pre-roasted that before I started anything because it does take like an hour. So that was honestly the first step. But I used roasted garlic because I felt like it was going to give this sauce just a little oomph. Just, plain sauteed garlic, obviously amazing. But roasted garlic just has a little bit more of like a caramely, sweet flavor. So once the garlic was added, I used my immersion blender to just blend everything together. You can also put this in a blender. Pop it in there. It's doing the same thing. I don't want to say food processor because it might leak because of the water, but if that's all you have, give it a shot. It's gonna be a little chunky still because some of that liquid did evaporate and you really only put in like 12 ounces of liquid. So it's not gonna be enough to like make a sauce off of that liquid and any liquid in the veggies, but that's perfect because you're gonna add coconut cream and that's gonna be the creaminess. That's gonna be your liquid to make it a little bit more saucy. And then if you add too much liquid, it's gonna water everything down. So you don't want that. Then I added a ton of nutritional yeast. Like I kept going back and putting more in, like as I was tasting, I'm like, it's not cheesy enough. It's not cheesy enough. So I really did add quite a bit. Obviously, add it to taste. If it's not your thing or you don't want as much in there, add to your preference. And then I also salted because I was adding in a lot of stuff that was unsalted. Then I continued to blend everything until smooth. And I just kept tasting to make sure it was where I wanted it to be. Okay, once everything was salted to taste, enough nutritional yeast was in there, it was blended to the consistency I wanted. That's when I started the pasta and just set aside the sauce. I popped the pasta in the water and we're again cooking it a bit al dente because we're going to finish it off in a pan with some pasta water and butter. And we're just going to cook it all together. The purpose of the butter is just to like up the fat in the sauce and make it really silky and creamy. Because when that butter or like any fat comes together with the starches in the pasta water, it's so silky. Like honestly, that's the key to buttered noodles. Like add some pasta water and then it's not oily. It's like an actual sauce. Also, if you're doing a red sauce, if you add butter or any like extra fat, it'll cut down the acidity of the sauce and make it really yummy. Yeah, once it was done, I just plated it up, got ready to eat it. So final thoughts on the Revamp recipe. It is still pretty mild. It does have a little bit more complexity of flavor because of the garlic and the nutritional yeast, but it is a creamy sauce. It's creamy and mild, and I really liked it. Don't get me wrong. Still would totally make it again. I think I would honestly keep the mirepoix from the original recipe, like make sure there are also onions and celery in addition to the carrots, while also keeping the potatoes and the cauliflower, obviously. But I think I'd do that just to maybe see if it changes the flavor at all. But I did want to try this with risotto because I think it would be so good to make risotto and then like when it's 80% cooked, pop this sauce in there to make it really creamy without having to add cheese. And I think it would work really well. I didn't do that because I was like, I should try it over spaghetti in honor of the original recipe. And risotto just takes time because you have to stand there and like mix it and make sure it's like, you know, make sure the liquid's getting incorporated correctly. And I just have not been wanting to do that. Like, I love risotto. I love the end product. I do not have the energy or willpower right now to stand in front of my stove for that long and stir. Like, I just don't. So one of these days I'll try it over risotto, but I think that would be the better application as opposed to like a spaghetti sauce. But honestly, I really did like this sauce. I've had it before, or like a version of it, and I've always really liked it. So this one just kind of depends on, do you like cauliflower? Do you like coconut? Or do you eat cheese? You know, like that's just what this comes down to. So I'll leave it up to y'all. Try it out. See what you like. See if there's any tweaks that you found were helpful that you really enjoyed. And thank you for being here. This has been Revamp Beer Cheese Spaghetti Sauce.